Okay.
Thank you.
There we go.
Okay, all set. So thanks everybody for joining. I think I know most everybody anyway, but I'm Jane Previdenti. So I think you all know my son Troy. He's 18. He just graduated from high school last week. So he is headed. Oh, why are you waving, Frank?
I didn't see all these people before. It's great. I changed the gallery. It's so nice to see everyone.
All right. Okay. Sorry. So anyway, you all know Troy. So Troy's headed off to Inclusive U at Syracuse University in the fall, actually with Kaya Stafford, who's also a participant at GiGi's Playhouse. So we're really excited for the two of them to be going to Syracuse. So really the purpose of tonight, it's really just an informal discussion. I wanted to just share my experiences, kind of what I went through researching the post-secondary process for Troy over the past few years, kind of lessons learned and suggestions and advice and strategies. So I just wanted to share my experiences to hopefully make your process a little bit easier and a little smoother. So I definitely want it to be interactive. Please ask questions. So what I will do, there's only about 10 slides. After each slide, if you don't mind, to hold your questions. After each slide, I'll pause and take all your questions related to that page. And then Yumira, thank you, we'll go through any questions on the chat as well. So with that, Kay, can you share your screen?
There we go. All right, we good to go?
Yep, so you could start with the first page, the next page, yeah. All right, so I just wanted to go through the application process. You know, what you should know is the applications are very similar. They all require the same type of documentation. It's a lot of documentation. It's a lot of forms. It's a lot of questions. So don't get overwhelmed, you know, do a little bit at a time, be organized. You know, that's, I think, the most important thing. What I did is I just created a new directory in my drive. And as I received all these documents, I just started saving them down. So I had one folder. So as I did each of the applications, I was able to just kind of pick from the one central place. So organization is key. Most applications are online, so you want a soft copy. Sometimes you don't get it, like the IEP, sometimes you don't get a soft copy, so scan it, put it in your directory. There are some schools, actually we applied to 5 schools. One of our schools still wanted hard copies, so we had to print everything out. So definitely, you know, organization is key. And spread it out. So as I said, Troy applied to 5 different schools. So what we did is we started the summer of his senior year because we knew it was going to be a lot of work. And as you know, our kids can't just sit at a computer, you know, for 3-4 hours and knock out an application, right? They just can't physically do that. So, so what I did is I just started early. I spread it out. I think I started in June, and I gave myself a goal that we would do like 1 a month. So we were finished by Christmas break of his senior year. You know, so you want to do as much as you can during, you know, summer or during breaks, because as we all know, once school starts and your, you know, the child is going to school and has homework and has after school activities and all these things, it's going to be hard to sit them down and have them get through the application process. So definitely start early, kind of map it out. And as you go through the application, most schools, the parents can help in terms of like punctuation and spelling and things like that. But when you go through the essay questions, it really has to come from the child, you know, so it really needs to be in their words. And it's okay if the sentence structure is simple, right? I mean, that's kind of what our kids are. So definitely don't try to rewrite it for them. They want to really see it in their words. So let me just take you through each of these real quick. So the IEP, Of course, the most recent IEP, they don't really care. We all know that the Board of Ed is not always efficient, and you don't always get one every year. So if yours is 2 years old, it's fine. It is what it is. You're dealing with the Board of Ed. They don't care. On the other hand, the neuropsych, they do want a recent neuropsych within 2 years. So again, map it out. If by the time you start applying to colleges, if it's going to be 3 years old by the time you start applying, you better start now and get that neuropsych updated, right? And again, plan in advance, because you need to find the doctor, you need to schedule it. There's logistics around that. As you know, sometimes the assessment takes 2 or 3 sessions for our child to do the assessment. And then it takes a month for the doctor to write the report. It comes to you, you're going to review it, you're going to have comments and edit. There's a back and forth. So the whole process could take 3 or 4 months. So that's something to just be cognizant of, so that you make sure you plan ahead and you have a neuropsych within the last 2 years. You'll see on a further slide, I have a bunch of resources, and there's an agency called Kenwood that could connect you with a doctor who does neuropsych exams. OPWDD. So if you did apply and you got accepted into OPWDD, and I hope that everybody on this call has, and if they have not, I totally urge you to do it ASAP. It is amazing. So each of these applications will ask for your care coordinator, your broker, your financial intermediary. They'll also ask questions about guardianship. You know, the kids will typically be over 18. So, you know, have you applied to guardianship? What stage in the process are you in? Or supportive decision making is another thing that actually Troy is going through right now. So all those questions, again, be organized. I have everything in my phone. So whenever anybody says, who's your care coordinator, I could give you their email, I could give you their phone number, I could give you everything that you need, because they ask it over and over again. And then I'll just give a little plug about self-direction, right? So each of these schools, at least the 5 that Troy applied to, they all take self-direction funds. So if you don't have a self-direction budget, I strongly urge you, to get one. Our kids, because of their needs, which will typically get a self-direction budget of about $50,000. So that by far pays for the cost of a college tuition. All right, so moving on, school transcript, right? That's easy. If you don't have one already from your school, just request one. They should be able to turn it around within 24 hours. Behavioral assessments, not all our kids have behavioral assessments. They don't need any, so it doesn't matter. If you have, great. There's no need to get any. Pictures and videos. So every single application asks, they want to see the kid behind the application, right? So again, start putting pictures into this directory you're creating. They want to see pictures of the child being active. So not only do you need like a formal picture, right? You definitely need that. So if you have your school pictures, definitely have that one readily available, but also pictures of what they do in their free time, right? I mean, everybody knows, I think Troy loves basketball. He does karate on the weekends. So I had pictures of him doing a 3-point shot and a video of him doing a karate move for his fellow classmates. I had a picture of him in a band with his friends. He was playing the guitar, his friend was playing the drums. So pictures that really kind of show more of who this child is, that he's a person and a real personality. So start going through your phone, save those pictures, and just put them in this directory, because they all ask for pictures. 2 recommendations, of course, teachers, therapists, coaches, my advice here is to select people who know your child for, a few years, if possible. They could speak to his or her growth over the years and his development and his independence. So definitely teachers and therapists who know the child, coaches, and anybody. So, I guess what I would say there also is be respectful of the people you're giving the recommendation to, right? So don't rush and give it to them and say it's due by the end of the week, right? Be respectful, give them at least 2 weeks to do the recommendation. You want them to do a good job. You want it to be very thoughtful. So give them time, and it's okay to give, the same teacher 2 or 3 recommendations. They expect that, right? That's their job. They know they're going to do recommendations as you go into college. So don't feel bad. Again, just pick the right people and give them enough time. Teacher reports and therapist reports, that's easy. Each, all the schools should be able to give you, they do not only a 1-pager of the grades, but they also do a very comprehensive narrative from each of the therapists and each of the teachers. So most of the applications I saw, a resume was optional. My recommendation here is just do it. Anything that says optional, do it. So Troy didn't have a resume, so we pulled one together. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I'm happy to send you a copy, but it's going to be mostly the things, right, that he did at school. So a lot of the things that we highlighted on the resume is, at school, Troy was an ambassador for new students or prospective students. So he sat on panel discussions when they had open houses. So that really displays his public speaking skills and his his leadership skills. So that was something we always put. He was also like the manager of the school store in his math class. He was the manager. So that's great to put on a resume. He also, in some of his physical therapy classes, he had some younger students. So he was kind of the model for the younger students to model the movements, right? So again, shows leadership skills. It shows involvement. He was a scorekeeper at a dribble program, at a basketball program. Those are all great things to put on the resume. So definitely start thinking about what he's done at school, what he's done after school. Troy won the 3-point contest. I put that in there. Anything you could think of, put in there. Okay, so parent interview and student interview. So you always have these in most schools I've seen. They're separate. Maybe they're together. It really depends on the school. Recommendation for the parent interview is have some stories in your back pocket that you could speak to that shows his growth, that shows his independence. And I apologize, I know I'm using he. Obviously put whatever pronoun that you identify with, but I'm just thinking of Troy, so I'm saying he, so forgive me. So have stories that you could speak to. So one of the things we always talked about, and of course with the pandemic, the question always came up, how did he handle when we moved to Zoom, right? Within like a 24-hour notice or whatever. And sure, he had his growing pains. It was hard. And I don't hide the fact, right? We had to do a lot of work and sit with him and go through his emails and make sure he was on when he had to be on and make sure he accepted the invites. And, it was a part-time job, but then he got the hang of it. And then he became very independent, and he was where he had to be when he had to be. I didn't have to hound him anymore to accept all the invites and look at his calendar. He became very independent. So that was something we always spoke about because it really showed his growth, right? This is something he was thrown into. He didn't know how to handle it. With a little support, he succeeded. So have some go-to stories that you could speak to that show his growth and his independence. In terms of the student interview, practice, right? So come up, the questions are usually pretty basic. So you could definitely practice the questions. With Troy, we practiced with his therapist and with his teachers and with his tutors. So we all practiced with him. By the time he got to the 3rd interview, he kind of knew everything he was going to say. But definitely, they always ask, tell me a little bit about yourself, right? So they leave it open-ended. So let them practice. With Troy, it was, okay, where do you live? How many siblings do you have? Do you have any pets? Where do you go to school? What type of school is it? All kind of the basic things about himself. And then they always ask things about, what do you do in your free time? What do you do on the weekends, right? So again, talk about your extracurricular activities, what you like to do. He likes music, he likes art. Give some examples, again, have him have some go-to stories that he could talk about. What are his favorite classes at school and why? So think of an example that he could talk about why, he loves biology or why art or music or whatever it is, to give examples. And then the essay question. So the essay questions, again, start early, do a little bit at a time. There's probably about 7 to 8 essay questions per application, so it's a lot for our kids to do. So do a little bit at a time. You know, what we did with Troy is we researched the website of the school he was writing the application for. We understood kind of where it was and what they specialize in, the clubs, the different activities, so that when he filled out the questions, he was able, you know, to kind of identify with the school. You know, why do you have him practice? Why do you want to go to college? Well, you know, what do you hope to learn at college? Those are all the basic essay questions. So before he goes on the interview, he should reread what he wrote in the essay questions so that he's prepared. So I'm going to pause there. That was a lot. So any questions on this slide? So this is the pure, you want to go back, the pure requirements for the application. So what can I answer?
So Jane, in the chat, Jordana did have a couple of questions pertaining to this particular slide. So one of them is, how did applying with Troy differ from the applications you did with your neurotypical children? That's one. Do you have a sense for how inclusive these programs are? So I'll give you those two because there's a few questions embedded in there. So you can start with those two.
Yeah, I mean, the application, I mean, as you saw the list, I mean, there's so many requirements, right? There's so many documentation things that you have to pull together, and forms and questionnaires. So it was definitely more comprehensive than a typically developing application or student. And plus they need help, right? I mean, Troy needed help, right? So we needed to sit with him and go through the questions and talk it through. He took notes. You know, I enlisted his siblings. Thank you, Hannah, Allison. You know, they sat with him. They wrote note cards like, what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about your art? You want to talk about your music, your basketball? And then they helped structure it into a sentence, and then finally put it into the final essay. So he kind of needed to. I mean, he did. He needed help every step of the way. So really enlist everybody you can to help move these applications along, because it's a lot of work, and it does take a village, as they say. So definitely different, just because they're not independent. They can't just sit down and pump out an essay. In terms of and if I didn't answer that, Jordana, please let me know. In terms of your other question, so one of my slides, I have a bunch of different post-secondary opportunities. Some are all special ed and some are all inclusive. So there's definitely the gamut. There's a lot of programs on either side. We looked at all inclusive programs, which had like that peer mentorship aspect to it. That may not be right for everybody, right? There are other schools that are all special ed with very specialized teachers. So it's really specific to the student. Did that answer your questions, Jordana?
Yeah, I just, so for me, inclusive, what you described Troy doing, and again, Aiden is several years out, so I never want to say where he'll be. He could be anywhere, but the kind of academic pieces that you're describing, like conversations that are put into essays, verbally being able to be interviewed, you know, Aiden may be at level in certain ways, but he is not at, maybe he will be 6 years from now, right? But right now that feels like something that I couldn't say for sure he could do those things independently. And yet it would be amazing if he could participate in it. And what you're describing as inclusive is more like an integrated program. And I guess I'm trying to figure out, you know, how much is the academic piece of a doorway or a barrier for participation in these programs? Is there any explanation in any of the ones that you've described that aren't, for example, more like the DayHab program, like the Melissa Reggio program or something, which are really more, anyway, I don't have perfectly formulated the question, but my question is like, how much did you understand the academic piece to be a barrier for entrance into some of these programs?
Well, I mean, the first thing I'll say, so Aiden is still, how old is Aiden, 13 or? Yeah, so he's still young, right? So Troy wouldn't have been able to sit in interviews, right, at that age. So I would say, you know, Troy really developed like in his sophomore and junior year in high school. And again, it's practice, right? It's practicing those interview questions. And he did mock interviews with his, like I said, with his tutor, with his speech therapist, right? It didn't come naturally at first. And then he just got better and better with more and more practice. So that's definitely important. In terms of the academics, no, they don't say you have to read at a 5th grade level, you have to do this, you have to do that. No, they may ask some of those questions, but it's really, and each school is different, right? I mean, I'll tell you one experience. So on my list is a school called Millersville, and it's in Pennsylvania. And the head of the school, when Anthony and I met with her, was like, you know what? If I have a child who wants to come to college at my school, I'm not turning him down. We will make it work for him. And that was like just such a wonderful answer. Like, it was just so amazing that, if you have the motivation and the whatever interest and the passion, and you want to go to school, who is she to turn you down? So she'll make it work. So it was just really refreshing to hear her view. So there are schools like that, right? And in terms of academics with Inclusive U, you have the peer mentorship. So you could pay for, right, which is through your self-direction budget, as much resources or mentorships as you need. So for Troy in the beginning, they've already assessed him. He might, I forget now, but I think they said he probably needs like 35 hours a week of mentorship, but that will go down as he navigates the campus and his community and the school and everything, right? So you just get that extra support that your self-direction budget could pay for. And then somebody might come into Inclusive U and need 10 hours a week, right? So, but I don't think I'm answering your academics, but again, academically, he could pick his classes, which we're going through right now, and he'll sit in the room, right? He'll sit in the class with typically developing peers, but he'll have a peer mentor, and he'll have access to the teacher's notes or the teacher's presentation. He'll have the peer mentor who will sit side by side and help him understand what was being said. And if there's like a 5-page essay due on whatever topic they were talking about, then the advisor and the peer mentor would work with the professor and say, okay, well, for Troy, he's really strong in PowerPoint, right? So he's going to do a 5-page PowerPoint presentation about that topic that you discussed in class, because he can't sit down and write a 5-page essay, right? So they don't necessarily need a certain skill set, at least the schools that I've looked at. What else is in the chat?
Yep, there is just 2 more questions. One is from Margaret. She's asking, is there is no common app? ?
So really I guess what I meant, Jane, was like, you applied to 5 schools, and were you able to use this basically the same essay, like Hannah might have done, or, like.
Yeah.
Because that could put you over the edge, right? If you had, they ask different questions, or could you basically use the same essay? Because I think that could be really brutal.
Yeah, well, they're all very basic questions, and I call it essays, but it's like 7 or 8 questions usually. Sometimes there's a 1-page essay, so it varies amongst the different schools, but they're all about kind of the same thing, okay, right? So if he's got, Troy always had a common theme, and then we just had to tweak it a little bit for each one. So it wasn't like you had to sit with a blank piece of paper and start from scratch each application. We were able to use some of the ideas from his other one and just kind of, enhance them or expand.
Because they all kind of ask sort of the same stuff. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, because otherwise it's already overwhelming. You don't want it anymore. So
thank you.
And then we have one question from Frank. This is a great question, actually. What was your incentive for Troy to attend college? And are there programs at GiGi's NYC you would recommend potential college applicants attend to build the skills necessary and succeed in the application process?
Sure. So wait, the first question is, why did I want to try to go to school, to college?
What was the incentive? Yep.
Well, because I have 2, as you know, I have Hannah and Allison, and they're going to college. Why wouldn't Troy go to college? It was just something that we did, right? I mean, you finished high school, you go to college. It's not for everybody, of course, right? But for us, it was just kind of the next step. So why should I personally think college is a wonderful experience. We all had, I think, hopefully had a great experience in college. It's a time of your life, right? You meet new friends, you go out, you do different things. I didn't want to deny Troy that experience, right? He's a very social person. I wanted him to experience what his sisters were experiencing, what I experienced, right? It's a nice time in somebody's life. So I didn't want to deny him that, and we raised him that he could handle it. He had the same expectations that we had for our daughters. In terms of your second question, yes, GiGi's Playhouse has 2 programs that our national office has created. We've tried to get them up and running in the Harlem location. We have not yet. We're hoping to get some funding so we could kick it off in another year or so. And if we had a bigger location, it's called GiGi Prep and GiGiU. So those are kind of or I guess post high school, post-secondary opportunities where we teach the kids life skills, living arrangements, different things, independence. So there's a whole curriculum that our national office has come up with that we would love to be able to bring to our community, but we haven't yet. So if anybody is interested and wants to be on a programming committee to help us launch it, by all means, reach out.
That's awesome. Jane, I was also thinking about, well, I believe Troy attended Teen-tastic, and that really assists, I believe, in social skills, correct?
Mhm.
Which I think probably applied to the process. And then I believe now we're partnering with NYU on this great conversational speech program. So they just don't say something and that's it. It carries on. What do they say next? What did they listen for? Did those 2 help, Troy? I was curious about that.
And
We don't have
that's
no
one of-
curriculum
that's
yet.
that's one of our newer programs with NYU. We have the one-on-one speech therapy, but based on the needs of our community, our kids needed kind of that conversational, the back and forth with their peers, with adults, right? So instead of just answering yes, no questions, it's that back and forth. Well, how was your weekend? My weekend was good. What did you do? I went to the movie. What movie did you see? How was it? That back and forth is hard for our kids, and unless they get that, and unless they get the practice. So a lot of Troy's, his speech therapist, but also through this NYU program that we created, would practice that, right? Because when you go to school and you're in a new environment, you want to make friends, and you want to be able to have that conversation and that back and forth. You don't want it to be a one-way street. So NYU was great in terms of helping us develop that program.
Awesome. Thank you, Jane.
Okay.
And I know that we have a few more slides. You want to keep taking questions, or you want to go on and to the second slide and then come back
Are
to
there
some of
any
these?
questions in the chat specifically about the application?
One is, can you tell us, this is from Mary Allen, can you tell us the school you looked into and how did you find these schools?
Yeah, I could probably go into that in a later slide. If we could wait on
Okay.
that, I'll make sure I answer that.
All right, and is diploma required in order to attend college?
Is a diploma required? I mean, that's really school specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Syracuse, yes, he got a high school diploma, which, and I'm not very well versed in this, but it takes you out of kind of that Board of Ed because you've graduated, and now you're in this kind of adult services, of which we have, of which we're going to Syracuse. So yeah, I don't know if that answers it.
Jane, quick question. Sorry, this is off topic. Who's our Zoom user guest? It's great to see everyone's faces and names, but who's our Zoom user that's joining the talk? Just curious. Could they please speak up? Curious who that Zoom user is. Does everyone see it?
Yeah, she had her picture up earlier, I think, right, Kay?
So it's someone part of our community. I'm just curious, so we'll know who attended. So,
Yes.
but they won't say anything. Okay. Just curious.
I didn't catch the name, but excuse me, her video was on. For
Okay,
sure.
it's just good to, so we keep in touch with people. It's really awesome to be able to do that. So.
Yeah, so maybe
Okay.
can that Zoom person just identify themselves, their name?
Hello, Zoom user.
Jane,
There's the trick.
if I could just ask while we're waiting, I know you said about the diploma, but I guess the question is also, does it matter what kind of diploma? And I think for like knowing everyone on the board, everyone's kids go to different schools. And I think I'm more aware that in the private schools, they get a high school diploma. But for the kids in the New York City public school, it's like a certificate of. So I went to school. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's not. I mean, I guess I'm wondering whether again that's a kind of barrier, because we do know that if you go to private school, you get a high school diploma, but in the public school system, as you know, they don't have access generally to the Regents diploma, so it's called something else. It's like a certificate of completion or something.
Yeah.
Do you know
Yeah,
if
well,
that
even-
was ever exclusionary?
Yeah, well, even Ideal asked me that question when he graduated, you know, do you want a diploma or do you want a certificate? But in order to go to Syracuse, he needed a diploma. But if it were another school, it could have been a certificate. So I'm not well versed in that. So I really asked the school for guidance on that. So yeah, so just ask your school, or if you have schools that you want to look into. I'm sorry, I don't know.
But I'm gleaning that your sense is that wherever you go, it is it's a certificate that you completed it. I mean, it sounds like they just need that documentation that whatever program you went to for high school, you completed that program. Is that a fair read?
Yeah, but like if you haven't, like it's weird though. So I don't know enough about it. If you haven't met all your IEP goals, right, then you could stay in the Board of Ed through, 21. So we said he graduated and got a diploma because we said he met his IEP goals, but he needed a diploma for Syracuse. But I guess what I'm saying is not all schools need that diploma. So maybe you could still stay in the Board of Ed system till 21. So it's totally complicated. I didn't have to learn all that language because I just asked Syracuse, what do I need to do? I asked Troy's teachers, and did it. So definitely get guidance on that, because I don't want to misspeak. So, okay, why don't we go to the next slide? Kay, can't find you in the Zoom. There you are.
All right, I'm sharing right.
Okay, so things you should think about, consider. Location is definitely key, right? So how far do you want your student to be away from home? It's a very personal decision. We didn't want Troy to be too close, right? That he would call us and say, pick me up for the weekend, I want to come home, because we just didn't think that he'd be able to adjust, knowing that we could just pick him up spur of the moment. But we also didn't want to have to, deal with a flight and to get to him if something were to, not that anything were to happen, but just if he were homesick or something, we didn't want to be a flight away. So we looked at schools that were kind of in driving distance. Obviously, Syracuse is perfect. It's 4 hours from New York City. So it's far enough where he can't come home over the weekends, but close enough that if he was homesick or I felt like he needed something, I could just jump in a car and be there in 4 hours. So definitely, child specific. Oh, sorry, I thought there was noise. Is that everybody's on mute, right? Okay. So, right, so definitely child specific. And then I think somebody asked the question earlier, inclusive environment or special ed environment. So, what do you want? What do you think your child is most successful in? 2-year program or 4-year program, there's both. We, again, personal decision, I felt like 2 years, by the time Troy would adjust and get used to it, 2 years would be up. So I really wanted a 4-year program for Troy. We really wanted a 4-year program for Troy. Peer mentors, we talked about. So that's more of the inclusive environment. Troy's always been an inclusive setting, so he really learned best with his typically developing peers. They challenged him. He learned from them. There was a lot of role modeling. So it was really successful in Troy's development for this peer mentorship. So that's why we really looked at the programs that had that. Residential or commute, there's a lot of great schools in the city, all the CUNY schools, they're commuting schools. So if you want your child, to have a campus experience and a college experience, but they're just not ready to be away from home, there's a lot of schools where you could just commute to. As a side note, Syracuse, I think half of their students commute, so they don't live in the residential halls. So again, it's very specific to the individual. And again, self-direction funds, if there's any questions with that, I'm happy to speak to it. I know we've had different seminars on self-direction. If you do have a budget, if you go to a school out of state, I don't know enough about this. I think you can move your budget from state to state. It's not super easy. We had one school, George Mason University, that Troy was very interested in, and it's in Virginia. So I started having the discussions about how I move my New York budget to a Virginia budget. And it was complicated. I think it's doable, but then I stopped those discussions because he got into Syracuse and that was his top choice. But definitely something to think about. Okay, I think I'll pause there for questions on this slide. You mute, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. So there's a question that says, do you see a college education providing more opportunities for employment and independence than an 18 to 21 program? And does high cost of a 4-year degree create a value in return, a value return?
Well, the second question is the high cost of a tuition. Well, I encourage you to use self-direction funds. So we're all eligible for self-direction and OPWDD. And no, I don't think that there's a difference in terms of employment. Again, it's based on the individual and the student. They might be better in a transitional program, an 18 to 21 program, or they might benefit more in an inclusive environment or a post-secondary opportunity. So it's very specific to the child. I think there's a lot of programs that will help an individual get a job, after school, after high school, after whenever. So there are a lot of programs, and actually in one of my last slides, I have a bunch of resources. There's Jobs Path, there's AHRC, there's different organizations that will help help an individual find a job after their education. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure who asked that. Oh, hi, Laura.
We can move on. That was the last question.
Okay. Okay, so the next 3 slides really talk about what schools look for, right? And it's independence, independence, independence. So, so I guess my suggestion here, as we go through these slides, right? If your child isn't independent in these things, start the process, start the discussion, start the training, because you'll see in every interview, in every essay question, all this stuff comes out. They always ask about this stuff because they want to know that the student is independent and can do things on their own. Now, they don't have to master all these things, right? They don't have to be a pro, but they just have to have experience, right? And be successful and heading in that direction. So morning routine, they want to know you can get up for school and out the door on your own. So is your child the child that you have to wake up 3 times and nudge them and put the music full blast to get him up, or does it get up on his own? Can he set his own alarm? If not, practice. Use your phone if he has a cell phone. Set the alarm, practice it, get used to him getting up on his own. Preparing a light breakfast. Can he make a sandwich? Can he use, I think the last bullet point on the bottom of this slide, can he use a toaster oven? Can he use a microwave? He doesn't need to use a stove and an oven. Those are more complex. If they know how, great. But as long as they could put together a sandwich, put something in the toaster, heat up some leftovers, they just want to know that they have experience with that. Packing your backpack, does he know to bring everything? Notebooks, computers, calculators, pens, pencils, whatever. Does he pack his backpack successfully? His keys, whatever he needs. Does he dress for the weather, right? So Troy got very used to looking at the weather app on his phone, so he'd see what the temperature is. So he knows, he knew if it was cold, he wore 2 jackets, or is your kid, and Troy used to be like this, Troy used to wear shorts and a t-shirt no matter what season it was, right? But you know, can they dress for weather? Can they see that it's going to rain? I'm going to pack my umbrella, or, you know, that it's, you know, in Syracuse, right, 20 below or something. You know, is he gonna get his hat and his scarf and his gloves? So they want to make sure they can do that. Vitamins and medications, they don't expect you to be able to give yourself a dose of Tylenol for your pains or whatever. But they do, you know, if you have a daily multivitamin, or you have any standard medication you take, daily medication you take, they do expect that you could administer it on your own. If you need Tylenol for whatever reason, there is obviously the health department. So travel training is huge. So this was one thing that we actually got a late start in. And what I will tell you is, and again, it's in a later slide, YAI is a terrific resource. They do travel training at no cost to families. It is absolutely amazing. Troy has learned so much. So they want to know that you can navigate just a few block, well, for us in the city, right, just a few block radius. Can you go to the local grocery store or the pharmacy? Can you understand street signs, you know, when to walk, when not to walk? What about bike lanes? What do you do with ambulances? You know, you're looking both ways, but there's cars could be turning. So they just want to know that you kind of know that the safety rules of the road. They ask if you take public transportation, but, you know, a lot of our kids don't independently. But they do ask, but they don't really require that or anything. What they do like to see is the use of Google Maps or GPS, because a lot of times, especially with Syracuse, it's such a big campus, if you can't find your building, you can actually just put it into Google Maps and it'll tell you, you know, go straight, then make a right and make a left. And so if they get practice using Google Maps, that's definitely a huge win. What Troy practiced a lot too with his travel trainer is asking for directions, which is also part of advocacy, which you'll see later. But, you know, if he is lost, can he go into, you know, the local pharmacy and ask the cashier, you know, how do I get to 96th Street or whatever it is? And can he kind of listen and then follow it? You know, oh, you go here, you make a right, then you make a left. Does he know his right from his left? Like all those little things. So it definitely takes practice. And then problem solving, you know, what do you do if you get lost? You know, who do you call, or who are the safe people? Really, that's what they teach in travel training. Who are the safe people that you could speak to? So definitely travel training is definitely key, and it helps with their independence. So again, if you haven't started that, YAI is absolutely terrific. And then you have living skills, right? Basic laundry, keeping your room clean. So in terms of laundry, have them start doing it now if they don't already. How much soap do they use? You know, moving it from the washer to the dryer, folding it. You know, you don't have to really know how to separate your whites from your other stuff. Hopefully they don't have such nice clothes that they need to do that. Keeping your room clean, right? You're going to have a roommate if you go off to college. So they want to make sure that you're tidy and that, you know, your place isn't a mess. You make your bed, you know, you change your sheets. So all those basic living skills. So they'll definitely ask things like that in the interview. So there's 2 more pages of different suggestions in terms of what schools look for, but I'll pause for a minute if there's anything on this slide.
There's no questions on this particular slide, Jane.
Okay. All right, so problem solving. And this comes up in the interviews all the time, right? So if a roommate uses something of yours, what do you do? So they want to make sure that you're not going to fly off the handle and have a tantrum or whatever. So what do you do if somebody takes something, right? We all know the expression, use your words, articulate, you know, why does it bother you? You know, give them the words. This is special to me. My mom gave it to me. It's sentimental. Or, you know, help them with those words. And if it happens again and your roommate takes something, you know, what do you do, right? You go to your advisor, you go to your RA. So practice a lot of those questions before the interview as well. What do you do if you're locked out of your dorm room? They asked that about his apartment building. What if you don't have your key and mom or dad is not home? What do you do, right? Well, I know my neighbor on the 3rd floor, I could ask for help, or I could go to my doorman and ask for help. So just being able to kind of think outside the box. Same thing with if you can't find a building, you know, maybe you go into the dining hall and you ask the receptionist, you know, I can't find my math building, can you help me? So being able to kind of, articulate and ask for help, raise your hand, obviously, in class if you need help. So the next one is, have they been away from home before, right? So Troy did not. So this was one thing in looking back, I should have done. He never went to a sleepaway camp. There are a lot of great sleepaway camps out there. I know other families on this call have gone to them, Frost Valley, Ramapo. Again, I have a resource in the back page of some different a camp service as well. But they want to know that you could live away from mom and dad. So sleepaway camps are key. And a lot of our sleepaway camps, they're only a week, 2 weeks. You don't have to go for the whole summer. It gives the child the taste of being away and what it feels like. So they always ask that question. So the answer we gave is Troy did do a couple of overnight programs. So the day camp that he went to, they would hold 1 or 2 overnight sessions. So that definitely was helpful, that he had practice there. Also in his high school, they went to Washington, DC for like 3 nights, stayed in a hotel. So we were able to give some of those examples, but the best thing is sleepaway camps. It's hard, so we never did it. I didn't think Troy was ready, but he's definitely ready now. If you can't do any of those things, sleepovers with friends are great. Another student that you're friends with, that the parents really well, definitely something that you should do. There are schools as well that have summer programs, right? I know, Tracy, Riverview, but the College Experience is the one in Albany, and they have a summer program. Troy actually got into that summer program, so I was so excited for him to be away from home for a week so he could practice. And then COVID hit, so he wasn't able to go. They canceled it. But definitely very important. And then they look for that, that you have interests and passion. So like I've said earlier, what do you do after school? What do you do on the weekends? What are you excited about, right? What makes you wake up in the morning? And, Troy had a lot of things to talk about. So definitely make sure you help your child kind of articulate their interests. Personal hygiene, right? They want to make sure that you could do all those things on your own, showering and brushing your teeth and if it's difficult, what we did for Troy is we kind of had a checklist where, every night before you go to bed, you got to brush your teeth, you got to wash your face, you got to floss, you got to do this, you got to do that, right? So Troy was big on checklists. So that's what to meet a lot of these things, we used checklists, and then he became independent and didn't even need them anymore. So definitely things to work on if you haven't already. So I'll pause if there's anything on this slide.
I don't see any questions, but I do have a question. So this particular slide, what do schools look for? Is this specific to Syracuse, Jane, or this is just in general that our children should be aware of and should know what to do?
Well, like I said, I applied to 5 schools. Each of the 5 schools asked questions about each topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
I have a question, Jane. Given where you are now, where Troy is now, and he's about to go off to Syracuse, is there anything you wish you'd had more time to work on that you would say, well, he could use a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that, or are you pretty much okay with where he is?
Yeah, well, I think the travel training we got a late start on, right? So he just started doing that. I mean, one of the reasons was when COVID hit, nobody was doing any travel training, but so that was one thing. And like I said, like sleepaway, like just practicing, not always being with mom and dad or a family member, right? And because when you're with somebody else overnight, you have to really advocate for yourself. You have to ask the other parent, I need this, I need that, or I'm scared, or I'm whatever, right? So definitely I would have done more of that. And even now, like a lot of Troy's friends are asking me, can we do a sleepover? We need practice. So I think, enlist your friends, because I think that's important. Go ahead, Jordana.
Yeah, I have a question. Among the programs that you looked at, other than like the AHRC ones or whatever, did you consider like non-dorm or non-residential programs? Like I was just thinking, we have family members across the country, and maybe the dorm situation per se might be the challenge, but the college experience, I would still want him to have an experience away from me, but he
Right.
might not be able to go all the way to do like living with a peer. And like I teach college students, I don't know that they're always the best role models either. So it's like, I have mixed feelings about it because I'm immersed in a college environment, but I would want him that experience. Did you investigate anywhere like it might be, or do they allow at any time a kind of enrollment in the program that doesn't have the residential piece, or is it always the college plus residential piece for the programs that you applied for?
Well, right. So again, it's in the slide I mentioned, things to consider in terms of, can your child do residential or is commuting better? So there are a lot of good programs where you can commute. So for Syracuse specifically, if we live near Syracuse, they did ask me like would I have been a commuter student, because there's so much newness, right? New school, new campus, new friends, new everything to navigate. So maybe commute the first year and then the second year live in the residential halls, right? So I mean that didn't work obviously from where we lived, and we just got a little bit more mentoring support is what we're going to end up doing. But yeah, no, definitely there are programs where they'll say, commute for the first year, let them get used to it, and then become a residential student. So again, there are so many different programs out there. And so what I will say, and it's on my resource page, ThinkNet, what's it called? thinkcollege.net, I think, it's on the last page. Wonderful service where you kind of put in your criteria of what you're looking for. So I'm looking for, just the immediate 3 states, or I'm looking for all over the country, or I'm looking for inclusive versus special ed, or I'm looking for residential, whatever it is. You plug it all in, and then it kind of spits out all the schools that meet that criteria. So that's actually that's how I found Millersville. So that was the last one I put on my list. And somebody asked me earlier, how did I get the list of schools? So for the people who know me, every time I talk to somebody over the probably 10 years, every time somebody mentions a college opportunity, I started putting it in my notes in my phone and just writing it down until the time came. So by the time, Troy got to high school and I'm like, I got to start looking at this, I had a list of like 15, 20 schools of just word of mouth from what people told me, right? So I just built it that way. And then also on the other page, you'll see there's also so many college fairs, right? So there's special ed college fairs. Include NYC is a great resource. They have a lot of good seminars and programs and college fairs. And actually Jasmine, who used to be our site coordinator, I believe still works there. So she's a good contact. But if you're not on those email distribution lists, you should get yourself on it. And so I just started collecting all these schools over the course, the course of the many years. A lot of times, if I see something, I'm on a bunch of mailing lists, so is Yumira. So if we see something that looks good for our community, we'll post it on our GiGi's newsletter so that other people could take advantage of it. So definitely keep an eye out for that. But yeah, definitely reach out to all these resources, because there's a lot out there, and everybody wants to help each other.
Okay, and there's a question, you may have answered this. This is from Karina. How will Troy attend classes? What kind of support will the school provide for him to navigate the campus and in classes?
Right, so they expect that you're going to need help, especially in the beginning, to navigate the campus, right? Syracuse is a huge campus. That was one thing I was concerned about, but I did go to visit the school before we applied. So right, so they'll meet with you and come up with how much support he needs. So like I said, we already had our preliminary meeting with, I don't even know the names, but call it an advisor. And we talked about Troy's needs in terms of navigating the campus and what he'll need in the classroom and the school and residentially. So, you know, we came up with an amount of hours per week that he's going to need. And that's not set in stone. So if he's struggling in the beginning and needs a little bit more, we'll add a bit more. And, you know, and vice versa. We'll take it out as he learns to navigate better. And they do, a lot of the peer mentorship programs that I've looked at, they do things in pods, right? And this was before COVID. They used the term pod before COVID. So they would all go to the dining hall together, you know, maybe five special ed students, 6 special ed students with one mentor. So they're all going to the gym together, or they're all going to the dining hall together. So, and that's not included in like Troy's, you know, 35 hours a week, right? So that's just kind of, you know, the pod kind of, you know, I can't think of the word, you know, the pod approach.
Like it's the built-in support in the program. It's not additional.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way the program is envisioned.
Exactly. So, but did I answer all those questions on that one, Mira? I think there was more. Oh, Karina, yeah, there you are. Did I answer them all?
No, there's, so you did answer Karina's, and she made a comment. It seems like Jasmine is no longer at Include. She's going to become a broker. Okay.
A self-direction broker. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. And then there was one other question from Laura. How does the inclusive program work in the academic classes at a college? Hard to imagine how a professor can personalize the material in a college course. How does that work?
Well, I'll let you know, Laura. No, I think I said I don't know if I said in the beginning. So he'll have a peer mentor in the classroom, right? That will go to his classes with him. So yeah, it might be a big lecture about, but he's selecting the classes. So he's not selecting physics, right? And there's no math requirement, right? So he could, I actually had the list of classes he selected. I should look at it, you know, but it's like, you know, music theory, or, you know, really cool classes that he's interested in. So even if it's like a big lecture with 100 students, he'll have a mentor to kind of help him understand that. So they'll have their takeaway and they'll talk about what happened in class, and he'll have access to, you know, to the teacher's notes, like the teacher speaker notes. He'll have access to his peer mentor's notes, and what they'll do is, I mean, they're not going to differentiate their curriculum, but they're gonna kind of modify it. So he'll meet with the advisor and they'll say, okay, well, we're going to talk about this topic, and then you got to write a 5-page paper on it. But you know what, for Troy, he's going to do a 5-page PowerPoint, you know, about kind of the basics of what he learned. So they do it that way. So it's a lot, it takes a village, right? There's a lot of people in the administration department at these schools that work with the peer mentors and the professor, right? Because the professor, you're right, is not going to sit there and differentiate it for Troy. So yeah, there was something else I was going to say. It'll come to me, but does that answer?
Yeah, that's very helpful, just to kind of understand the format. So thank you for explaining that.
Okay. Jordana.
Yeah, just to follow up on Laura's question about the classes that Troy could select, is it like a culled list from, like, college catalogs are huge? Do the advisors work to kind of, you know, make it a little less overwhelming, but also maybe they've already vetted the professors or have experience that these classes have been successful to students? Like with any college enrollment, there are some professors who are going to be nasty and some that are going to be helpful. Some, you know, there's like all our kids look at Corsical and all these other things. I'm sure Hannah did it when she went to college too. Like, you know, like you just like, do they tell you like we've already, like, so that Troy has some confidence looking through that course catalog? Is there this sense that the college administration already kind of pre-screens instructors and courses that they feel like the students will be successful in? I'm assuming not excluding others that Troy might be interested in that they could experiment with, but do you get the sense that they do some pre-vetting of the college material?
Yes. So yes, it's overwhelming, these course catalogs. I mean, So Hannah knows, Hannah like put it as a bookmark on Troy's computer. It is like, you know, you have to go through the alphabet, right? There's like 20 classes under A, 20 under B, and so on and so forth. And not only is it classes, but it's clubs as well. So he went through them, and this is where you enlist people. I enlisted his sisters, and he went through letter by letter and kind of looked at the different programs. And he obviously gravitated towards art and music. And I actually found, I think I have his list. Yeah, like arts lab, he loves biology, drum set, that's a class, it's called drum set. Film, sound and image, guitar, history of music, health and wellness, right? Because he loves all that stuff. Journalism, physical ed, you know, he loves his sports. So he went through the course catalog and he found these things that interested him. But it's funny you asked, because in one of the forms that I had to fill out after he got into Syracuse, and I had to fill out this intake form, and I had to put in all the class selection. And I wrote back, I said, I mean, this is overwhelming. Like, how do I know what class is? Like, isn't there an advisor? So I filled out the form without the class selection because it was just so much to do. And so they explained to me that, you know, so there's an advisor, so they just want to know what his interests are. So you don't have to actually pick out the class, you know, so just pick out kind of the themes and what your interests are. And then he's going to meet with the advisor and very carefully select the classes that will meet his needs. So it's very, very supportive. I mean, they don't let you go through anything on your own. There's a lot of people. And Laura, I remembered what I was going to say is the other thing in terms of the professors and stuff. There's something, and I didn't know what this was when Troy graduated from high school. There's a 504 plan. I don't know if anybody knows what that is. You do, Jordana, but I guess it's like the IEP for when you leave high school. But it talks about what support he needs, what academic supports he needs when he goes into college, right? So we met with Sam and Emily from the Ideal School, and included things like you know, reading the questions on a test for him, or a separate room when he does assessments. What else did we put? Extra time when he does assessments. Graphic organizer, use of a calculator when he does math. Things like that, like an audio book. If they have to read a book, he should get the audiobook version. So it's the different supports that are going to help him be successful in these college type classes.
Yeah, that's great. I actually, even with Ella and some of her education, the accommodations that they provide through like student services, I've seen that happen. And it just, like you said, varies based on the student's needs. So there can be support out there. That's great.
Yeah, it's a really good document.
Super.
All right, anything else? I think we have a few more slides. All right, so the last thing here is money skills, right? So they've asked this in every interview Troy's been on. Can he go to a store and buy something? Can he use a credit card? Does he use cash? Does he know how much money to get back? You know, does he generally know how much things cost? Can he order from a restaurant? Does he have a bank account? So if any of these are no, start practicing. So to answer Tracy's question, this is probably what we didn't do enough of, in my opinion, for Troy, right? Because I don't think he only just started using a credit card when I started being asked that question in these interviews, right? So I never really thought of that. So we let him use a credit card, you know, like and his sisters are great with this. Tell him to go across the street, get some toilet paper or get whatever, paper towels, and we'll give him a credit card, or we'll give him cash, and just so he gets practice with that. Occupational therapists also do a lot of this, and you could ask them to work with this with your child. Troy used to go down to like the Duane Reade, and the OT would practice with him. Okay, so go buy a chapstick. But where's a chapstick when you have this huge Duane Reade store, right? So he's got to go to the cashier and say, where can I find a chapstick? So he's got to speak, right? So he's not intimidated. He asks the question, then he's got to go find it when she tells him, you know, go to the back of aisle 3 or whatever it is. So navigating that. you know, and then purchasing it. And then if he gives a $5 bill, what should he generally get back? So occupational therapists definitely could help with that. And then in terms of a bank account, right? I mean, our kids can't have that much money or else they don't get the state services, but they can have a bank account. So everything's online these days, but make it a point to go to the bank and deposit money, or, you know, or cash a check, or whatever you could do, so that they get used to it and that they can manage it on their own. So definitely money skills are important. All righty, anything on that one? All righty,
Nope. Nope, no questions.
Okay. All right, so to summarize what I've learned through the past few years, start early. So like I said, I started collecting different school opportunities for Troy, you know, years ago. And then started actively looking at them. Speak to people, speak to other families at GiGi's. That's where I learned most everything, right? From other families who've either been through it or have already done some research or know somebody who did some research. So definitely start early, prepare, go to campus. So each of these schools that we applied to, before we applied, we went to the campus. So again, start early. If your applications are due the fall of your senior year, you want to start touring them probably the summer before, right? Because you want to spread it out. And, you know, just like a typical school that you're going to apply to. You know, tour the town also. You know, see what's there, see what they have to do in town. Is it a bus schedule that takes you into town, and how does that work? So really get a feel for it. Eat at the dining hall if you can, or, you know, go, you know, with Troy, it was like, we got to go see the gym because he's a workout fanatic, right? So let's go see what that looks like. We went to a basketball game because he loves basketball. So let him really get a sense of what it's like. So as I said many times, it takes a village. So just enlist support from everybody: teachers, therapists, tutors, brothers and sisters, babysitters, right? Everybody could help you with this process, with all those 3 slides of independence. They can all help with that. They can all help practice essay, interview questions. They can all help with essays. So definitely enlist them all. Take advantage of the school resources. So your school would typically, you know, probably has some resources, has seminars. We have a ton of seminars at GiGi's Playhouse. So keep your eyes open for that. Go to college fairs, you know, just anything you see come across your desk that looks like it's going to be helpful, join. Build independence, as I said. Also, you know, attend all the opportunities that the school gives you, right? So they'll say, hey, you know, you're applying to this school. If you want, there's a Q&A session with other students. You know, if you want to join. We always joined because it was just more practice for Troy to kind of listen about the school and to ask questions. So always say yes to those things, even though they're not mandatory. It just demonstrates interest. You would do that with the typically developing school as well. That's what they drilled into me when Hannah was going through it. Demonstrate interest, right? That you're interested in the school. Prepare for your interviews. The other thing I didn't mention, prepare questions to ask during your interviews, because after every interview they say, okay, Troy, now do you have any questions for me? So again, make sure they have some questions. It's got to come from them, but just help them kind of develop those questions. So for whatever reason, Troy's go-to question was, you know, tell me about the student ID. He was really excited to get a new ID card, because you could use that card to swipe into your dorm, or to swipe your dining hall, or to go to the bookstore. So that was like a big thing for him. So it was a good question. So he always asked that question. The other question he always asks is, what do you do on the weekends? You know, I wanna do sports. I wanna go to movies. I wanna go bowling. And then lastly, you know, make connections prior to orientation. So when you do select a school and you're moving in, so that's what we're trying to do now with Troy. So as I mentioned, Kaya is going to Syracuse as well. We only knew that family through Zoom because we were all virtual, right? So we met for lunch. The kids got to actually interact face to face. You know, I met Tamara, her mom. So that's really important. We have friends. One of Hannah's good friends goes to Syracuse. We've already enlisted her. to just kind of keep an eye on Troy, check on Troy. If they go to a movie together with all her friends, maybe ask if Troy wants to come. You know, just different people that could help kind of keep an eye, or just do check-ins really. There's also some other people we don't know, but our friends know them, so they're going to connect us to these other students who are sophomores and juniors at school. So we're going to try to connect with them over the summer. So again, when Troy goes to school, he kind of knows people already. And then I have people I could say, hey, you know, can you go over and check in on him? Okay. Any question on that one? No. Okay, so this was my laundry list. This is not exhaustive. There was a lot more, but I just kind of highlighted. So the first 5 are what we applied to. They're all inclusive programs, the first 5, and there's just a list of other ones. There are a lot more, like I said, but I just wanted to put this on paper. Okay, you want to go to the next slide, Kay? So these are the resources. So I definitely encourage you to do thinkcollege.net. That's the resource where you could just put in your criteria and it gives you a list of colleges that would meet the needs. Include NYC, that's what I mentioned. They have a lot of seminars. They have a lot of college fairs. So definitely get on their mailing list. Ruby's Rainbow, I haven't talked about this. This is absolutely amazing. So Troy got a scholarship. We don't know how much. It's anywhere between $2,000 and $10,000. This is only for individuals with Down syndrome who are going to a post-secondary education. And it's funded by just wonderful families who, you know, typically they have either a newborn or a young child with Down syndrome, or it could be a grandparent, and they want to see what the future holds for their young child, and they want to support a kid who's 18 going into college. So it's a very comprehensive application, but again, it's a lot of the same details that you have in your little directory. So definitely look at that. It's specifically for kids with Down syndrome. It's an amazing organization. And then AHRC Job Path, again, those are more kind of the adult programs, but they definitely help with, I think somebody asked the question with getting a job. They definitely help with that. Kenwood Associates, that's what I mentioned. If you need an updated neuropsych, this is a great organization. They'll match you with a good therapist or doctor. YAI, as I mentioned, has a wonderful travel training program. Camp Experts, they help you find camps, you know, overnight camps, sleepaway camps, whatever it is. So that's a great resource. And then transitional programs, like I mentioned earlier, there's a ton of transition programs. I just listed 3 here. You know, maybe your child, you know, wants to do that. Maybe they'll be more successful doing that rather than going to a college type atmosphere. Again, it's very specific to the individual. So I just listed a few programs here. And I think, is that it? And that's it. So we're actually, is it 8 o'clock? We're at the 8 o'clock mark. So we did pretty good. I know, we have 10 more minutes. We have 10 more minutes. So I'm happy to answer any other questions in the next few minutes. Anything?
It looks like, yeah, there looks like Margaret has a question. Do you worry that you will fall off the transition program cycle from going this route? Not sure which route, Margaret, are you referring to?
Like, I'm not sure if I'm really, I have no idea. It's like the Wild West where we're going, right? But I mean, there's such a track, I guess, for 18 and 21 year old to 18 to 21. So you're sort of pulling Troy out of that kind of track, I think. And maybe it's a little bit more evident here in Connecticut, but I feel like there is sort of this track that they have kids go on from 18 to 21. And then it's like, okay, well, Troy's not going to be in that bucket. So where, like, from the social services perspective, do you know anybody who's like sort of come out on the other side of the college experience, and how do they get those sorts of supports once they finish college? Do you have any idea?
Well, I'm not sure I understand your question exactly. So
Well, I mean,
so I don't think Troy could, so I think the first part of your question is, Troy can't go back to an 18 to 21
Right.
program, right? He's done now. He's out of the Board of Ed
Yeah.
system. You know, if for
Okay.
whatever reason he weren't successful and I wanted to go back to a transition program, I mean, I'm not sure. I would hope I can. I would just
Right.
have to pay privately. I wouldn't be able to go through the Board of Ed and
Okay.
seek reimbursement. But I would think if I just paid full tuition, I should be able to.
Okay.
Which is like 100,000. But so I think that was part of your question. But then your other question is after college, like what supports he has? Is that what you're?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you sort of play by the typical path that, you know, the Board of Ed or whatever people sort of have been following, then they, at 21, they're like, okay, we have this place and this place and this place that probably could help you find a job. And,
Right. So I'll give
you won't have that
years.
sort of scaffolding. So I guess at Syracuse, do they do like post, you know, do they do like career, do they have career services for these kids, or?
Yeah, so.
And maybe you don't know. If you
no.
don't know, that's okay too. We have no idea.
It's on my list. Give me another year or two, but no, to answer your question, there are a lot of services that will help, you know, for after he graduates college, right? So I've gone to presentations from JobPath, and JCC has a ton of great presentations from experts in the field. And there's this thing called Partners for Housing. I've been to a couple of seminars on that. So again, you just have to tap into it and get educated, right? And just share resources with your fellow people, for friends, you know, who have been through it all. But there are a lot of organizations that will help kind of that next step, right? So the next step for Troy is maybe, you know, finding, you know, an assisted living type or a housing opportunity for him, right? And then finding a career path for him. So I don't know yet, but I'm sure Syracuse will have those supports, but there are also other organizations that will have those supports as well. So it's really just getting educated. And the other thing to know, I don't know if I mentioned this, I know I'm encouraging everybody to do their self-direction budget, but what I didn't know is when Troy graduates high school, his self-direction budget just doubles. No questions asked, it doubles because now they're saying you're out of the Board of Ed system, so you're not occupied from 8 to 3 anymore. So we need to give you all this extra money to get all the supports he needs to fill a full 12-hour day. Before, I just gave you supports to fill a 6-hour evening or whatever, right? So I think a lot of that will help, because then you could purchase the services, from your self-direction funds. But I'm still, I don't know all that, what comes next, but when I do learn it, I'm happy to give another seminar.
But it's like very clear that you're sort of exiting the Board of Ed system at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jane.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question. I don't know how to write it in. But there was a next to the last paper that you showed quickly. It had Syracuse University and then College of St. Rose. I wonder if there was any more that were there that you had applied to for Troy?
Yeah, if you want to flip back to that slide, Kay. So yeah, the first 5 is what we applied to. Again, those were peer mentorship type programs. It was just where we thought Troy would be most successful. So yep, there you go.
There you go.
So St. Rose Integrated Studies at Millersville, that's a great program. Mason Life, and then the College of New Jersey. So those are the 5 that we applied to.
Okay, and College of Mount St. Vincent. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, that one I didn't do, but I guess that's a commuter school. That's if you live in Manhattan, that's in Riverdale.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And there's a question for Mary Beth. How many classes will Troy be taking?
So I believe Troy's going to take 3. That's typically what a student in inclusive U takes. You know, again, it's probably different for different colleges, but that's what he'll take. So, and I don't know yet what that means. Does that mean it meets, 3 days a week, 2 days a week? I'm not sure, but they say inclusive U students typically take actually 2 to 3 classes a semester.
Okay,
And,
thanks.
and sorry, and the way they align their tuition is really aligned to a self-direction budget. So they make it easy
Okay,
to pay the tuition fees via your self-direction budget, the way they structure the tuition.
right. So then the student's not working towards a degree.
No, they don't get like a bachelor's degree. They don't get a college degree. They
Right.
get like I'm not sure exactly what it's called. Maybe it's, Jordana, like you said, it's like a certificate of completion, but it's a certificate. It's not a degree.
Right, okay. Great, thanks.
Yep.
I just put a question, like, from what you researched, say our kids go through the Board of Ed to 21. Do you know if those college programs will accept applications from students who, are 21? So say we wanted our kid to go through the full, whatever, which also includes some of the training skills that you talked about, like travel training, increased independence, a lot of that stuff they'll do within both the transition programs you cited, but also the New York City programs. So can you apply if the kid finished at 21? And then, because then you said you can still they have access to self-direction through adulthood. So.
Right. Yeah, you definitely can. The 5 that we applied to, yeah, you could go in at 26, you could go in whatever. They have all different ages. It doesn't have to be right after college. They actually, we're probably more of the exception, because I think they actually expect the student to do a transition program, 1 to 3 years, and then come to their school. So it's definitely, yeah, they definitely know it's going to happen. Yep. What else?
I don't see anything else in the chat unless people want to just raise their hand and ask questions.
I would say it might be helpful at some point to have another one of these sessions about non-college campus setups, because they're on the list that Jane showed. There are other college-like experiences that aren't on college campuses that are probably a good fit for some of our kids as well. Certainly for Laura, a non-college campus is probably going to be what we would go for. But I don't have as much knowledge as Jane, so I couldn't help you with that. I'm still working it out. But there are some people I think who may have looked at some of those, because Troy, as everyone knows, is pretty exceptional. And I'm very excited about this opportunity. But there's some other programs that our kids might look at too.
Yeah, no, totally. And thank you, Tracy, for bringing that up. I mean, this, by all means, this is what was right for Troy, but there are so many different opportunities out there for our kids after college, after high school. So yeah, we do need, we need an SME, a subject matter expert to come in and really help us navigate the whole thing. But definitely enlist your schools and the counselors at the schools, because they know your child and they could kind of, help you navigate. It's a whole new world. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I hope it was helpful, and Kay will send out the slides, and you guys all know me, so just reach out if you have any questions, and I'm happy to share anything else.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Karen.
you.
All
Thank
right,
you, Jane.
thanks.
And good luck, Jane.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you, Jane.
Okay, bye.
Have a good evening. Thank you so much, Jane. That was amazing.
Yes.
Thanks.
Enjoy your summer.
Thank you.
You as well, Margaret. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
And I'm not leaving till Hannah leaves.
Well, I'm not. I want to say